Hello, New Zealand. Welcome to Straight Talk. This is episode number 107, and we're back in the studio and everything is working fine, so we're all back off holiday. In this episode, the latest political poll has just come out. Is it good news or bad news for the government seeking re-election, the coalition seeking re-election in November? We asked this week's panellists the same question last week. What's their advice for Christian parties considering standing in the general election at the end of this year? Should we have a referendum on the Maori seats as proposed by New Zealand First? They proposed it both now and previously in 2017. Big question. Is it okay to encourage weight loss, or does that undermine body positivity and promote fat shaming? And should the government subsidise Wegovy, the weight loss pill? We'll come back to that. And if we have time, we'll check out the panellists' views on swearing. But they are not potty-mouthed at all. They're a lovely panel. Let's meet them. Firstly, in the Deep South, we've got Rodney Hyde. How are you? No swearing, G-rated?
Oh, I couldn't be better. Thanks, Bob, and it's lovely to be back.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you as well. To Southside and Susan Miller and Manarewa. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's nice to be back. It's a busy year for us.
Yeah. It's amazing how quickly everything gets busy again back into February, eh? And we're all trying to adjust out of January. Nathan Sauli in, what is it, Mount Wellington? Where it's somewhere around there, eh?
Mount Wellington. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. You've just been up there for your daily jog this afternoon, correct?
Just in a hikoi up there, for my my thoughts and prayers up the top, so it was all good.
Great view. And right up north, enjoying the sunshine, I'm sure, and maybe some humidity, is Mel Taylor in, what's the name of the place you're in, Mel?
Matakoe.
Yeah, that's why I didn't say it, because I can't even spell it. Just for those who don't know where that is, kind of what area?
Near, that's by the Brenduins, in between Brenduins and Dargaville. There you go.
Okay.
Good old Dargaville.
We all know where that is. Okay. All right, let's get straight into it, team. And look, a new poll out just from One News at 6 o'clock. So this is hot off the press. And very quickly, it says that National is slightly down, but so is Labour. And the Greens seem to have benefited from Labour. And maybe you could say New Zealand First has benefited from National. There's still 11% of the country who think the Greens have answers, which should worry us all. Seats in the House, though, the sitting coalition government would still get re-elected if there was an election today. Preferred Prime Minister, well, the news on One News, they said it was just a significant drop for Luxon, 3%, which of course is the margin of error. And he's still as popular as Chris Hipkins, but it was like the end of the world. They didn't talk about Hipkins, they just talked about Luxon. But Winnie has got into double figures. And I think that might be the first time for a while. So that's an interesting one. But I think this is the most interesting one. It's just that it shows the trend. And I think the most interesting trend there, when I talked to Simon O'Connor before coming on air, is that National are just not winning new votes. They're sort of stuck around that element. Now, I see you nodding your head, Nathan. What's your take on what you've seen on the polls?
Yeah, I think you probably nailed it there, where we're just getting a bit of shifting within the right and the left block. There's not a huge amount of transfer or crossover. I've been pretty out there in the lead up to the election calling for a grand coalition. I'm a huge believer in that conspiracy. It's what I'd like to sort of predict early and get on the record early with. But I think the right block, for example, is being pushed one way by popular minority leaders or minority party leaders, and then the left's being pushed centre as well by unworkable coalition partners. So that's my prediction. It's very unlikely, but if it does happen, I will be taking the Oracle on as my new nickname.
Now, just before we go to the others, because I know some people will say, well, what about the other polls? Just to give you an idea. So the Roy Morgan poll actually had a similar result. National, ACT, New Zealand First combined on 52. The left block on 44. But then if you go to the latest Courier market research, you'll see that the Labour are in the lead up the top and a little jump to the Greens. So a little bit all over the place. One more poll before I get you to comment, Mel. This was the Dominion Post, the Post Freshwater one. I think it was at the end of last month. But as you can see, it's Te Pāti Māori who are letting down the side because basically New Zealand First and ACT are sort of similar, but Te Pāti Māori needs more votes to help the left. But of course, they're busy imploding. So for Mel, what's your takeaway from those polls and tonight's poll?
I think one day in politics is a long time, so those polls can easily shift. They're not surprising at the moment. I've talked to a few people that have said, oh, it's over for Te Pāti Māori. I don't necessarily think that's true, and that they have a faithful bunch that will vote for them regardless, that may not be look into politics as a whole, look outside of their political bubble. It's interesting. Winston doesn't surprise me. He is gaining some traction. And it certainly doesn't surprise me with National being on a slight slope downwards. They haven't had, much to show. But of course, we've got an election campaign coming up. We've got mainstream media, and that can always influence a little bit. So we'll wait and see.
Okay, Susie, what are you making any predictions yet, or too early?
I think it is too early, but I think news travels really slowly across the general public. Like, we're ahead of the game, and we know what's been going on with Te Pāti Māori and the Greens, for instance. But I just think people aren't really digging deep, like Mel said, into what's actually going on. So they've just give an answer to the poll list. Yay, Winston! It's his time. He's the only one who stood strong on Israel's right to exist, and he swam up tide, and now he has the support of, well, I think he always has, the silent brassed-off majority, but we're just a little bit stronger. The Green leadership team keep riding on the CRT train, and they, maybe lost a bit of momentum with the Palestine stuff, but they're continuing to beat the drum of CRT and climate change and minority grievances, and they're still striking a chord. And I think their sustained high polling reflects social media influence and religious education in our schools. And I don't mean Christian religion. I see that firsthand. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty strong, the indoctrination in our young people. So.
Okay, Rodney, from your observation and watching lots of elections, for a minor party leader to be up to 10%, that's. I mean, Winston always says, I don't believe the polls, but he's got to be looking at that and thinking, hey, I'm getting traction here, and he's also getting traction because 10% is what they get in the election. It was just over 5%. It was 6%, wasn't it? So he's doing things right. He'd probably like it to be a lot more.
It's huge. It's even huge for ACT, because both parties are in government, don't forget. And the history of minor parties being in government is they just get obliterated. And so the fact that you have two support parties getting 10% and 9% respectively is huge for them. They can do better than that when the election time comes around, because they can cut loose. I think they're getting good. They're getting a good result because they've been able to position themselves as different from Luxon, who clearly is a bit of a weight around poor National's neck. That said, National will be very happy with this poll because it shows them in front. It actually shows that they're in front better than the poll suggests, because they've allocated 6 seats to Te Pāti Māori.
Yeah.
And you'd have to be wildly optimistic to think that they'd get all 6. And of course, them losing those seats is a net loss to the left, because Labour will just have them, if every Maori seat they win is one off their list. So the Maori Party is overestimated in this. I would expect Labour to go heck for leather to destroy and rub out the Maori Party. And they'll want to do that because it'll be scaring off their middle voters. And they'll say, don't worry about Te Pāti Māori, we're taking them out. Winston will he'll stay in double figures and climb. Chris Luxon's going to breathe a huge sigh of relief because it's not bad enough to dump him. And if you're a betting person, you'd say it's going to be a comfortable centre-right government at the next election, as long as Mr. Peters stays in the camp, which I believe he will do.
Yeah. And I always find it fascinating how they show which one's the preferred Prime Minister, because Willis they've shown as 1%. But had a look at the data, and also on 1% is Erica Stanford, the Minister of Education. Jacinda Ardern is on 1%, believe it or not. Marama Davidson's on 1%, Chris Bishop's on 1%, and so is Kieran McAnulty from the Labour Party. So they pick and choose who they actually put in that gap there. But
they're being naughty.
Yeah, of course.
One thing, Bob, I was fascinated that this poll had the top party at 1% and the other polls had them at 2%. That's actually a significant result. And the top party will be literally drinking champagne at that result because they're in the news. I haven't seen any great coverage of them, but here they are at the start of an election and at 1%. To give you a sense of that, when the ACT Party was in Parliament, even in opposition, 1 or 2% was about what we'd expect in Parliament heading into the election, and we always made it back. Yeah. So them at 1% is significant.
But just to put that in context, Aotearoa Legalised Cannabis Party is on 0.4, New Zealand's on 0.4, and Women's Rights Party's on 0.3. So that's all within the margin of error. So it's interesting they've picked top as well. What did I say? Up. What's it say? Up 1%. Well, that's a lie. They were on 0.4 in the last one, so they're actually only up 0.6%. It's not even the margin of error. So
but they're in the list. That's my point.
Oh, exactly. Well, the media is going to, the same way the media promote Chloe, they're going to promote the top party, aren't they? Look, getting into a lot of detail here, but I do just want to, I'm interested to get the panel's reflections just on what we saw over Waitangi weekend and over the last couple of weeks, because we saw Te Pāti Māori saying it would go with Winston. Winston says he won't go with Te Pāti Māori. The Greens say they could work with New Zealand First. Labour and the Greens want to be seen together, but there's trouble at Mill because Penny Henare, the Labour MP, suddenly resigns, not known to the leadership. And the big rumour, Penny Henare going to go to New Zealand First. I'll have to ask Rodney about that one shortly. And the other interesting thing is that the point that Rodney made is that the coalition is actually functioning very well, despite its predictions of imploding within a couple of months of formation. And like I say, they could win the next election. So Nathan, what was your takeaway from all the antics that we saw at Waitangi, Te Pāti Māori, the Greens and Labour trying to appear united, and there wasn't much focus on actually the government, which normally Waitangi weekends, the big knives out for the government. It just didn't happen, did it?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of optics took play. Credit to the government for showing up to Waitangi and the likes of Seymour and Peters for speaking. I think if the left was receiving that sort of criticism to their face, they wouldn't show up to something like that. And they've proved that. They don't show up to places where there's confrontation or there's challenge. So credit to the government for showing up. I think it'll be interesting to see how the whole narrative of the government being anti-Māori continues to grow in the coming days, because I actually don't think it's captured that many Māori. I think it's captured a handful, and the media's tried to exacerbate that more and more and more. But yeah, the whole Labour Greens appearance was quite humorous. Chris standing by while Chloe and Marama ran around him effectively. Who's in charge of that? Nobody knows. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But at the moment, I don't think anyone can work with Te Pāti Māori, which means the left is dead in the water. And I think, centre-right will be pretty happy.
Okay, and of course the ones missing was Te Pāti Māori from this wonderful unified party that was being promoted by the left. Mel, what was your takeaway from all the antics at Waitangi? And you might want to just comment on this kind of stunt where one faction of Te Pāti Māori goes and crosses the line and challenges the other faction of Te Pāti Māori. It's not a good look for unity, and voters don't like disunity, do they?
It shows that the whole tikanga in law is nonsense and foolish, because it can be challenged from Māori person to Māori person, from Māori family to Māori it can be challenged. It's nonsense. As for Waitangi Day as a whole, I really think that the everyday New Zealander, after all the antics we've seen continually year after year after year, they're over it. To most New Zealanders, Waitangi Day is a day off. Like, awesome, let's have some family time and a barbecue. I would be surprised at how many people actually watch the news to see exactly what's on, because I actually don't think a lot of people care.
Okay. Susie, when you watched Waitangi and all the shenanigans going on up there, did it convince you of any unity or which party to vote for? Because you actually, if I remember rightly, Susie, you were at the dawn ceremony last year, weren't you?
24. Yeah.
2 years ago. Okay.
Yeah. Fevers were high, and there was just this definite rupture going on, and it was pretty bad. But I feel like 2 years on, all of that's kind of fizzled out. I think 35,000 people turned up this time, but there were a lot more than the 2 years prior. So I think effectively, the coalition told Seymour to just be quiet, and he was just like, well, may have lost the battle, but not the war, et cetera, et cetera. I agree with Mel. I think I didn't watch it. So I had to read what other people said, and I'm watching you guys keenly to see what is going on with Penny Henare. That's a real interesting. Apparently that stole the show, but largely I think New Zealanders kind of hold their breath and hope that things don't go awry there. I like what Pastor Jim Shaw wrote about Waitangi. He said Waitangi should be a day of celebration of the gospel of Jesus. Missionaries and Maori signed the treaty with a fear of God that is sadly missing today. And I'm quoting him directly here. It says, it is unrealistic to reject God in Parliament, yet expect him to hear prayers on the treaty grounds, just as it is unrealistic to expect Maori to find peace without forgiving. The tension we feel today is that a document shaped by Christian thinking cannot be lived out by parties who no longer think Christianly. Covenant or kawanata thinking requires faithfulness, honouring God and honouring one another. So that's the crux of it, really, is that New Zealanders are kind of sick of this. We can only expect peace in our land when our nation comes back to God. And then Waitangi would be a celebration of our union and not a day where we're just like, oh dear, what's going to happen this time?
Yeah. No, it was very good. I shared that on my social media as well because Jim, I think, summed up a really good summation of it. Rodney, just in terms of the trend though, and in terms of, what Simon and I were talking about, the long-term trend, it does seem like that National are in a rut. They just can't win new friends, and they're really depending on New Zealand First and ACT to get them over the line. Just before you comment on that, Rodney, also the black line is the interesting one. The black line is New Zealand First, and it's coming right up from 2 years ago, end of 24 when the end of 23 when the last election was. So, Rodney. National's not winning new mates, and that should worry them, because if they get the current vote that they're going to get, there's going to be a whole lot of list MPs that are going to lose their jobs, and some of those are senior MPs.
Yes, well, Christopher Luxon, unfortunately, is a very unattractive leader. He's not a person that shows a backbone. He's not a person that leads with principles. He's not a person that what he stands for. And he's all over the map, and it shows. And there's a huge disgruntlement within New Zealand. And Winston and the ACT Party are the beneficiaries of that within the coalition, which is extraordinary. But I just can't understand what they think they've done in their time in office to deserve a second term. All they are is not Labour, not the Greens, and not the Maori Party. That's their big plus.
Yeah. Okay, I do want to just quickly go around the panel just with this question. I will start with you, Rodney, and that is what we're seeing happening in Australia. And there is this big surge. This is actually an older poll. This is out of January, so it's slightly out of date. But One Nation, One Nation is a bit like, let's just, for simplicity's sake, One Nation, for those who don't know, is a bit like New Zealand First, and the coalition in the blue is a bit like National. New Zealand, the One Nation are out-polling the coalition. One Nation used to be the racist party, the xenophobic party, which of course we've heard of New Zealand First as well. But suddenly they're actually polling better than the coalition, a little bit like Nigel Farage is doing in the UK, out-polling the conservative opposition, in the UK. Rodney, should we be watching Australia and the UK with interest? Because there's, and even what happened in the States with Trump, there's something going on, even latest results out of Italy and a few other South American countries as well. Something's going on.
Oh, I think it's a revolution going on. It's out with the elites and in with with a revolution. With the definition of a revolution being that the elites get chucked out and a new crowd come in. And voters are looking for that because they're absolutely fed up. I mean, I'm fed up, so I understand how they feel because it's just been the same old, same old. And we don't like it. We don't like the globalization. We don't like the immigration. We don't like the lack of leadership. We don't like the lack of principles. We don't like the lack of spine. And we've actually had a demonstration, those of us who are of a conservative nature, those of us who are right wing, we have seen an example of Trump coming in and changing the story, completely upending Washington, D.C., and getting amazing results. We've seen the same in Argentina. It has been sensational. And we're looking at our lot compared to him and saying, well, why can't our guys show some leadership? We're not seeing it. And so people are looking at the Nigel Farages, they're looking at the Pauline Hanson parties, they're looking at Winston Peters, and they're going to tick those parties because who isn't sick of the current politics and the current governments of New Zealand? And like I keep saying every week, I'm a big Trump fan. I just love it the way he's gone in and just taken everyone on. And he's delivering. He's delivering exactly what he said he would do. Crime in the major cities down to 1900 levels, employment up, growth up, zero illegals. It wasn't that long ago when they were being told by their commander-in-chief he'd need legislative change to stop the flow of immigrants. Well, Trump showed them. Venezuela, Iran, the Middle East, he's showing leadership. It's what people want.
Okay, Nathan, I saw you nodding your head. Bit of a revolution, you think, happening overseas? I mean, look, it's not hard to look good when you're up against Kamala Harris, Sir Keir Starmer and Anthony Albanese. So,
Chris Hipkins.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, and Chloe Schwarbrick and Marama Davidson. So why the centre-right parties aren't doing even better is hard to fathom. But anyway, Nathan, what's going on worldwide, do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with Rodney. I think my favorite example is probably Argentina with Milei. Seeing how he just absolutely slashed the government, focused on small government, on real issues. I think for a long time we've lived in this probably 40-year period or so where we've had a real luxury of no major conflicts that involve everybody. The economy, in large part in Western liberal democracies, has been fairly good, and people have focused on building wealth, building family, and progressing in life. That's gotten so hard now in the current climate because of all these things that we've talked about with, COVID and immigration and all these things. People now, the silent majority, as people like to call them, are speaking up and are voting, and I think it'll just get more and more so that way. My only concern around the New Zealand context is Winston, amazing, New Zealand First, amazing. I wonder if they have the depth the further that they go into the party, and then I wonder if ACT can really help bolster that and bring some people to try and take more share of that sort of right of centre government. But no, I think we are seeing a global revolution, and we'll see it even more and more. Hopefully Canada with Pierre Poilievre coming back through, if he can get himself in there, and other characters like that.
Yeah, he needs to get another apple out, Pierre Poilievre, because that's where he started to be popular, just mocking the media interviewer who was asking dumb questions. Mel, Susie, do you want to comment any further on those other leaders? Mel, any comment to add?
I think for years we've had what's been perceived as weak political leadership. We had the whole COVID thing. Look at what Jacinda did. She was everywhere. The world loved her. But it was sort of like an awakening for a lot of people who were like, no, I don't want that rubbish. I don't agree. What is going on politically? And that's opened up an avenue for strong leadership to come through. People are sick of the namby-pamby, wussy dialogue, and they're coming out really strong, and people are resonating with it. They're like, yes, I want someone to fight for me, to speak up, to actually knock back all this, the gender ideologies and how the world's gone crazy. It's resonating with people.
Okay. Susie, anything to add?
No, not much. I think people are just sick of being told what to think, and they've had enough. So the emperor's clothes are, been revealed as invisible.
Yeah, trouble is a lot of that's coming from the media as well. But then again, we seem to be voting with our feet on that one. All right, let's just have a look at some of the comments here. Dean says, Right Honourable Winston Peters, obviously a supporter, deserves a term as Prime Minister. Well, he sort of does when the Prime Minister was out of town in the first 18 months of the coalition when he was deputy. Alison says, you should pronounce Maori names as a newsreader. Well, I hope I was doing okay, Alison. I think we should always encourage people, even if they sort of botch it a little bit. That was one thing I was disappointed about, was that Luxon did a Māori greeting when he spoke at Waitangi, and then he got slammed by some commentators because he didn't get it perfect. And I thought, well, do you want us to make an attempt or not? That doesn't really help. Harrison Moore says, really good results for those of us who are New Zealand First supporters. Fourth Adam says, Hanare joined, this is Penny Hanare joined in Te Pāti Māori's haka in Parliament. So I think, Fourth Adam, you're suggesting that maybe Hanare is going to Te Pāti Māori. Okay, watch that space. That's quite a difference from going to New Zealand First to going to Te Pāti Māori. So that will be interesting. Chris says, I think they've just left it a bit too late, Sue. What was that about? Was that about the run for New Zealand First, Susie? Was that what you were mentioning?
I'm not sure.
No, okay. Chris, clarify that one for us, because Susie and I are both confused, but that doesn't take much. Elliot says Te Pāti Māori is the EFF of New Zealand. What's EFF stand for? I hope that's not a swear word, Elliot. Okay, can someone tell us what EFF is? Thanks. What you looking at, Willis? So this is somebody with a cat in their YouTube account. What you looking at, Willis? Must be from England. Said, if the media weren't carrying water for the left, ACT in New Zealand First would be sitting at 20% plus. And what you looking at, Willis, I think you might be right. Justine agrees with you, Rodney, but I fear that New Zealanders are very laid back and don't like change. Many are still in love with the Jacinda syndrome. New Zealanders too left too, should use common sense. And Jackie says, I think New Zealanders have very short memories. And this segues perfectly into our next topic. This is the perfect moment for a real Christian party to step up. Well, thank you for that segue, Fourth Adam. Let's talk about that. So the question for the panellists, I did ask it last week, and it was just on the back of an open letter that I had written where I just analysed the Christian vote or Christian parties over the last 8 elections. And basically, it's averaged around 2.4% over the last 8 elections. We had the big heyday of Peter Dunn turning the worm, but then, actually, you were in Parliament in 2002, weren't you, Rodney? You were around when Peter Dunn turned the worm? Yep. So sort of came in on this. Yeah, and you can see the purple there. It just sort of sinks into the ground and disappears in 2017 almost.
I remember him being really upset because he said, Rodney, it's terrible. We have these caucus meetings and they all want to pray before we have the caucus.
Didn't he like prayer? He got voted in on the basis that he might encourage it. But the last election, just to give you an idea, 5 parties sort of under the Christian party vote split the vote, in my view, 1.34, because voters, as we said earlier, with Te Pāti Māori, don't like disunity. So, Susie, is there a future for Christian parties? Should they even be looking to the election, or is it time to infiltrate the existing parties, or both?
I think infiltration probably is my preferred strategy, because I think it really works. You said there's a handful of MPs currently serving, and that's, in my view, that's all it takes. One William Wilberforce, one Daniel, one Deborah, one Joseph. But I still don't dismiss the strategy of having Christian parties, because it requires a movement. It requires people to be passionate and committed for a long game, obviously. And I think God moves in lots of different ways. He doesn't have one formula that always works. We've just got to be tuned in to, and that's what I hope and pray for. I still have high hopes for Conservatives in politics, that people will hear the call, will take it on, and just be creative in the way that God directs us. That's what
Okay. Any, from your analysis, any explanation for why it was just so low, and why we just haven't seen that breakthrough on the 5%. Is it the disunity that you think that's been the factor, or
I think fear drives a lot of people. So the last 2023 election, people were scared that Labor would win one more time. And so, people weren't willing to give their vote. There was this concept of the wasted vote, and I understand that. I understand maths, but I still believe in staking your claim, making your point with your vote, especially when it comes to, your party vote. Like, I have total trust in God that He'll put a centre-right government in again. So it's not like I'm going to analyse carefully who the Christian parties are that come up as options.
Okay, Mel, I was trying to remember, but you have stood in elections, a few, and they've been for what we might call Christian parties. What say you on this? Is there still a place for it, and why do you think they've fallen short?
I say a lot. No, it's I did over 12 years in minor parties, on board serving as a candidate. It's really, really interesting when you remove yourself from that, to see how in a political bubble I was, and how much of a bubble the people around me were. So within that party, you start getting your supporters, and then you start doing meetings, and then start getting lots of positive feedback, and your bubble sort of closes in, where you think you've got an actual shot of reaching 5%. It becomes like a strange idea, and it's not realistic. And they keep doing it over and over again. And then there's this infighting, and then you've got all these Christians and conservatives arguing over which minor party to represent them is better than the other. And it's just division and division and division. I reckon we need to go and pop all those minor party political bubbles, because they're not achieving what needs to be achieved. Good on them for standing up. I've done it. It is hard work. It takes time from your family. It takes lots of finances. But at the end of the day, it's just doing the same thing over and over again. Nothing's changing. So something, you've got to look at that and think, well, we need to do something. It's been done before. We need some Christian and conservative voices more in Parliament, and we're just not getting them. It's just division. It's actually really sad.
Okay, Chris Denby just clarified what he was saying, Susie. He said, I said they've left it a bit too late to form a totally new Māori party. In other words, a more balanced one, the Peter Sharple's Tariana Turie type dignified approach, as opposed to kind of the radical approach that we have now. Nancy, I'm coming to you guys, sorry. Nancy Margaret says the Christian parties cannot agree, leadership issues. Brent says, unfortunately, the egos of Christian parties are just as big as those in other parties. Fourth Adam says, in a secular party, Christians generally become compromised, or they're just a minority voice, and so they can't get any breakthrough, to be fair. Fourth Adam says their message isn't strong enough. And Daryl says, unity is the answer. The pooling of good people's ideas and financial resources must happen in order to break the cycle of a divided vote in another 3 years in the wilderness. Prayers are that pride and ego can be overcome for the benefit of all us social conservatives. Nathan, is there a place for Christian parties, or should they be in a party, or should they be in a good old lobby group like Pillar NZ or Family First?
Yeah, look, I don't think that Christian parties are the way forward. I don't believe that the government should be Christian. I think anyone who understands history sees that having the state adopt a religion and then effectively legislate the religion does not work out for that society. I think there's some really great Christians in government at the moment and in Parliament. I was able to talk to Simeon Brown the other day, who is a very strong and vocal Christian. I talked to Greg Fleming just recently, who I was really impressed with, and his sort of the strength of his faith. So no, I think the right way to move ahead is sort of what we've heard earlier from the panelists is that God can promote these people to positions of influence. You've got your Josephs, your Deborahs and Esthers and Daniels, And these are the people who bring biblical wisdom at the right time. Proverbs says, how sweet is a word given at the right time is better than gold and silver. So I think that when we have Christians who have a deep faith, who have a conviction that they want to serve the nation, not just a Christian people in that nation, I actually think that those are the people who will find these positions of influence. But yeah, I don't think a Christian party is the way forward. I just think it is individuals who have deep faith that will make the biggest difference.
Okay, Rodney, I'm fascinated to know what you think on this one, because as a non-Christian, you were in a secular party and as a very socially liberal one, and now you're a on fire Christian. So, what's your argument? Do you think we should have Christian parties?
I'd love to see a Christian party succeed, but let's just analyse this a little bit. The past doesn't. The future is not dictated by the past. But here's an extraordinary statistic. There's only been 2 new parties into Parliament in my lifetime. All the other parties are splinter groups of existing parties. So there's something about our voting psychology that we think they're not real politicians and we don't vote for them.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've just got a question for you, Rodney, because we're all racking our brain. Who are the 2 new parties that came? Yep.
And the ACT Party. And the ACT Party only made it once we got Richard Prebble on, that people all recognised like he was an existing political figure.
The other one would be New Zealand First, wouldn't it?
No, it split from National.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
So did the Alliance, so did the Greens, so did New Labour. So it's all works out by an MP getting the huff on a matter of principle and wandering off into the wilderness and winning the vote. Yeah. The reason that the parties are divided is because you haven't got the necessary leadership. I haven't got it. I haven't got that skill.
Well, that's not what the comments are saying, Rodney. I keep getting these comments saying, "Come on, Rodney, stand," and they'll get 5%.
That's very, very kind. But you know what I mean? You know how you see a political leader, and they're often charlatans, but people that are just very, very good at it, and everyone just collapses around them because you can just see now that person's, that guy, that girl, they're going to pull this off. We're in. Ideally, it would be an MP walking away from the existing party or a minister, and that's where you could lodge a Christian party in Parliament. How much it would achieve, I don't know, because, you get 6 or 7 MPs, you can talk, but you can't actually sway the vote until you get 51% of Parliament. That said, we have a Christian Prime Minister. That's been no use. So I can't remember when we last. Bill English was a great Christian. He was very good. He was a very good Prime Minister, but that's been it, right? If you stand in the existing parties, National or Labour, New Zealand First or ACT, and you stand in you say you're a Christian, you're gone. You're not going to get through the selection process. And you're not going to get through the selection process for 2 reasons. One is they don't want you. But second of all, they know you're a target because the media would come after you endlessly, asking you your questions on abortion and the age of the earth and all this sort of stuff, so that you'd get wrecked. And so it's very, very hard at the moment for Christian MPs. The ACT Party, when I was there, always had 2 or 3 Christians. And we enjoyed it because it added to the debate in our caucus, and we always allowed on those issues a conscience vote, and it was very respected. But now politically, Christians by National, by Labour, by the Greens, by the other parties, are expunged. Literally, we've got 1 or 2 notable exceptions, but they survive by downplaying their Christianity, and they're led in that by their own Prime Minister. So I think it's dark. So what do? Well, we pray a lot and we work on ourselves. And I have to say, Family First has been huge. And I think we can gain more by supporting Family First than we can by, at this juncture, running around fighting the media, fighting the political parties, trying to get a few seats in the House. I hope and pray that Pillar New Zealand does equally as well as UPOL, because I think these sorts of organisations have a huge role to play, and a small bunch of people, as we saw in the States with Charlie Kirk, can make a huge difference. And just reflect on the impact that Charlie had on the last election and on politics generally without getting a seat in the House.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's check just some of the comments. Hayden, we're going to hold you to this. National will get around 42% of the party vote on election night. Watch this space. Okay. Simply Green says, O'Sullivan's law states that any organisation or enterprise not expressly right-wing will eventually become left-wing over time. Similar for Christian organisations. Actually, that's called Mission Drift. Simply Green, there's a very good book on that. Justine Vollier says, Christians in Parliament had no influence on the abortion bill that Labor passed over COVID. Well, in fairness, Justin, they tried to, and they threw in a whole lot of amendments to try and make it less radical, but they just didn't have the numbers. So we need more numbers in Parliament. So, yeah, it's not that did they not have influence? They didn't have the votes, would probably be fairer statement. Peter says, rather have a Christian Parliament than a communist one. Harrison wants Rodney to stand for Auckland CBD. He'll waste Chloe. Was that a play on the words waste? Wasted? Yeah, okay. And B. Thomas says, if Christians don't legislate morality, the anti-Christian groups will. And that is true as well. So I guess the argument is we'll lose every fight that we don't even turn up to. But let's continue. New Zealand First is going to campaign on a referendum on the Maori seats this year. Hope I said that right. With the party saying the time had come for a decision on their future. Te Pāti Māori said it's race baiting and rage baiting. Labor says it's cheap and cynical attempt to gain votes. But it's a policy New Zealand First took to the 2017 election as well. And Winston has referenced the Royal Commission into the electoral system in 1986 that said, because we have MMP, we're going to have a more representative parliament. So the original justification for the Māori seats would no longer exist. And there's also been a dramatic increase in the number of Māori in Parliament. But Winston called Te Pāti Māori's behaviour over the past 2 years the final straw. Well, if we base which parties are in Parliament on behaviour, the Greens should be abolished as well. Okay, so I don't know if that last argument washes, but let's just, Susie, let me come to you first. Should we get away with the Māori seats? Because we've already got, I think the current Parliament has about 27% Māori representation, and they represent about, 26% of the population. So they're doing pretty well.
Yeah, really well. But I think there's the strength of Winston's proposal lies in the misconduct of TPM. Like you say, there's plenty of misbehaving politicians in there right now. Like question is, why doesn't Jerry Brownlee do a bit more? And we need a strong mother type in there who knows how to keep house. But I think the Māori seats, what would the signers of the treaty have wanted? I guess I do think about that. I think about our story. I think that being a Samoan, I always have Samoa to go home to, and I've got that's home. I don't want Māori to feel displaced. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this, but just booting those seats out because some people have abused their rights in Parliament wouldn't be justification enough for me. I think there's things that we can do to solve that problem. But
yeah, I think that last argument of Winston's didn't help his argument, because it's kind of like, if you behave bad, we should chuck you out of the house. That's never going to work.
There's consequences, But
what about the representation? I mean, should we have some Samoan seats and Tongan seats and
there's
Asian
plenty
seats
of Samoans in there. There's enough, more than enough. But
well, there's more than enough Māori as well. So problem solved.
Just on a matter of like how I foresee our country keeping its like Kiwi culture, its Māori and Pākehā, just that's how I've always seen New Zealand, and I would love for it to stay that way. So New Zealand First is leading all about, get rid of those seats, but like we're also letting in a lot of like other cultures and they're taking over. And I just think we need to maintain our Kiwi culture. And to me, that's Māori and Pākehā. And, the Māori, there's not that, you get voted in. So if the Māori, think about who they're voting for, get off the whole activism, train, they might see that who the people in there aren't representing them well, and hopefully vote accordingly. Yeah. I have trust in our Māori people.
and in context, there's 7 seats that are Māori seats, which out of 120. So, that's 6%. So, okay. Nathan, what do you reckon? Should we get rid of the Māori seats?
I think we should have everyone voted in on the basis of merit. I don't think that we should be ethnically dividing people. I always hear people throw around those stats of 28% representation in Parliament, 17% of the population. But we should live in a society that values ideas, that values outcomes, that believes in equality of opportunity. But we can't manufacture outcome. We can't manufacture equity through effectively preferential pathways or bias, however you want to call it, whether that be through ethnicity, race, or other measures. So I think moving towards a point where every seat is one on merit, is one on what you produce, is one on your ability to actually follow up on your promises, and it isn't just there. I saw something today that in the last 2 years of Parliament, Takuta Ferris and Hannah Rafferty Clark, they haven't asked a single written question to any of the other MPs or the Speaker or anything like that in Parliament. So we need people who are actually going to take the role of being an MP, a public servant, and serve the public as opposed to serve themselves. And that's not attacking the ethnicity of those people, but it's attacking how they've carried out the role, and it just happens that they sit in those types of seats. So I think if we start looking at the individuals, their ability to follow through on promises, the ability to achieve change, as opposed to what heritage they have, where were they lucky enough or unlucky enough to be born, I think we'll have a greater nation altogether.
Rodney, you probably can answer this one. I was just Googling it, but you'll be able to do it faster. The Māori seats originally were established because Māori didn't have the vote because they didn't own land. Is that correct?
Correct. When the Maori seats were introduced, to vote, you needed to be male and you needed to own land. And the difficulty was that Maori owned their land tribally, and so no male Maori qualified to vote. And so they introduced the Maori seats. And amazingly, what that meant was that the Maori males were the first in New Zealand to have universal voting rights, because they could all vote, whereas not all white males could vote. And it stayed on. MMP, the Royal Commission said they should go, but the National and Labour, including Winston Peters, wanted to keep them because they didn't particularly want MMP to come in. I just want to pick up on the points made, and this is a very, very odd It contradicts what you think, but it's about political behaviour. And the behaviour of the MPs and the Te Pāti Māori Party speak right into why the seats have to go. And it's this. Historically, the seats have been okay because they've been within Labour. And when they've been within Labour, basically they've been subject to the Labour Party discipline, because to maintain your seat, you had to be in the Labour Party. That's been broken down first with the Tight Five that Winston Peters got in 1996, and they quickly left and formed their own party. And then, of course, we had Tariana Turia leave the Labour Party, and then the Maori Party start, and then we've had this kerfuffle. Just cast your mind back. You recall that we had John Banks and John Carter, two great guys. However, they always would shoot to fame by saying things that were racially challenging. So they'd say stereotypes about Maori. Both of them represented at different times Northland and Whangarei. And here they were in electorates that had the highest concentration of Maori within New Zealand. And they could win votes by saying nasty things about Maori. Think about that. They could do that because the Maori within their electorate were siphoned off into the Maori seats. They knew that by saying inflammatory things, they'd win support, not lose it. Now, the same thing works on the other side. once you have the Maori seats decoupled from a party like the Labour Party, then you're just going to have a race, and it's going to be a race, because who do you represent? You represent a race. So the more you can get the drumbeat going on Maori, the more success you're going to have in a Maori seat. If you want to beat someone in a Maori seat, you have to out-Maori them. You have to be more into the rhetoric. If you collapse those seats, your John Carter and your John Banks would actually have to tone down their language. Your Maori MPs that are in the House would have to tone down their language. As it is now, it's designed to be inflamed. When I first got to Parliament, Tohanare was already there. And he'd done 3 years representing Northern Maori, what it was then. And he came up to me and he said, "Oh, this is going to be great, Rodney. You keep attacking me and Maoris, and I'll keep attacking you and whitey fellas, and we'll both do well.
Votes will go up." Interesting.
And that's the awful logic that the Maori seats establish. And it always happens in every parliament or political system that you balkanize, that you actually get racially or ethnically distinct people having their own MPs, because you head to the extremes. That's why I personally want rid of the Maori seats. It's actually because I don't want the racial tension. And I can tell you this, we won't get rid of the Maori seats. Doesn't matter what Winston says. It won't matter even if we have a referendum, because it'll be such a kerfuffle, we'll almost end up in a civil war. We could end up in a civil war because we can see how upset Maori get over, their rights and a hikoi and all the rest of it. And no government wants to deal with that. Winston Peters campaigned, in 2017 as a bottom line on a referendum on the Maori seats. He never even raised it with Helen Clark because he knows she'd say no. And John Key or Chris Luxon would say no because they don't want to have the fight, which is, again, a sad reflection on where we find ourselves with this balkanisation of New Zealand politics.
Okay, very good point. And I just realised I made some fake news just before. I said there were 6 Māori seats, it's 7. So just to correct that, I just checked myself, did a fact check on my news reporting. Mel, should we get rid of the Māori seats?
I think a referendum is a great idea. Whether it would happen or not, the reason that I fully support it is because what I believe New Zealand is truly lacking in politics is good debate. Do I think we'll necessarily get good debate from the left and Te Pāti Māori? And absolutely not. But what I do think it would do is shine the light on a lot of right-wing conservative conversations. And I think that's important. And it's for the people to have a say on something as important as that. But yeah, I would welcome debate. Maybe the country can learn to start having really healthy, functional debates again. That would be fantastic to see.
Okay, I just have to show you this one. Where's it gone? It's in my queue. Oh, here we go. Nautical Nat says, this is for you, Rodney, I think. How good to hear a Kiwi pronounce Kiwi words. Wangare. Music to my ears. It's supposed to be whangare.
No, it's
Repeat
not.
After me, Rodney.
No, I come from Ngā Tahu, and that's how we pronounce it. So good on you. We're actually the correct translation.
Okay, let's move on. Tennis legend Serena Williams is making headlines, but it's not about tennis. It's about her decision to take a weight loss medication. And she actually was featured in an advertisement during the Super Bowl halftime where they pay $8 million for a 30-second ad. She's apparently lost over 31 pounds, but it's sparked a huge debate about the scrutiny of women's bodies, weight stigma, and body autonomy. Here is the ad that was shown during the Super Bowl.
I'm on Roe, 34 pounds down on GLP-1s. Healthier on Roe. Supported on Roe. FDA-approved GLP-1 options. Now, even in a pill. Weight loss expertise I trust. I'm moving better on Roe. I'm feeling better on Roe. I'm Serena Williams. This is me on Roe.
Okay, and her husband owns a company, so that's why she's on the ads, which is pretty handy. So the question is, should we be encouraging weight loss, or is that fat shaming and wrecking body positivity? I'm a bit scared who to ask this first question to, because you might take the implication that I'm getting at you. So I'll go to the skinniest person on the panel. Nathan, what do you reckon?
Thank you, Bob. I own many mirrors, so I'm very self-aware. No. It's a big debate. I don't know on should the government be funding it. I don't know. I don't think so. I know that there are still a lot of debate around clinicians and people in the industry and pharmac and all those sorts around what the long-term implications of something like this is. We've got stomach stapling, where obviously there's some pretty strict sort of after operation protocols you need to follow that some people don't and end up in a worse position. There are other weight loss. I think Ozempic was found out to have some pretty adverse effects, some pretty severe diarrhea and things like that, which is, sorry to say that word on the show, it's not my favorite word to say, but so it'll be interesting to see how the debate unfolds. But I think, no, I don't think the taxpayer should be funding it. I think people should be free to pursue the medical care, though, that they want to pursue, and I think that if that is what they want to pursue and what they would like to take on, that I wouldn't stand in the way of that. But do I want to be funding it? Probably not.
Okay, but what about the general principle of encouraging people to lose weight because it's a healthier option? Is it still okay for us to say that, or is that discriminating against people who can't or won't or don't want to?
I'll be vulnerable. I'll tell you a story that happened to me recently. Had a sore knee, got quite sore, so I went to the doctor to see them. And as a larger Samoan man, I assumed it was gout. Just being really honest. So I went and I said to the doctor, "Hey, look, I think I've got gout." And he bent over backwards to try and convince me that gout's normal, it's fine, it's actually not caused by dietary or lifestyle things, it's actually hereditary. And I thought, what course has this guy recently done where he can't give me an honest, like, I'm Samoan, I know a lot of people with gout, I'm not embarrassed, I understand there's lifestyle changes that I could make to prevent this sort of thing from happening to me. But his face, he went pale and he did everything to try and convince me. So I think we should be upfront. Being slimmer, being more healthy is beneficial to your long-term health. It puts less stress on the health system in the long term. It's something that we shouldn't shy away from. Asking people to make more effort to be healthy. I'm working out a lot more this year. I've actually lost about 15 kilos. So I think, why are we shying away from that? It doesn't help people in the long run to beat around the bush.
Okay, Mel, is it insulting to those who do struggle to talk about this topic? And is there such a thing as body positivity when it could be a health hazard?
This whole language around fat shaming and all the rest of it, it's just woke. It's woke. That ad made me feel, I call rubbish. You own how you feel. You can't blame that on some ad. It's all woke language. The reality is there's fat and there's skinny and there's underweight and there's overweight. And you own it. I own where I'm at, and I know if I want to change that there are tools out there and what to do. Any new medication, I'm always concerned by it because the adverse reactions seem to, come down 10 years later or whatever. And I'm all for, if she wants to promote that, then whatever. If she thinks it's good for her, then whatever. If people want to look at it, then do your research, follow it up. How long's the medication been around? Are there side effects? But it's just gone so woke. My gosh.
Okay, Susie, the argument for funding this type of thing is that actually you save a whole lot of costs down the road, because you save the cost of diabetes, both fiscally and health-wise. You save knees, you save hips, all the pressure that is put on a body. So do we need to be a little bit more honest, even though it might upset people? Because at the end of the day, it's about good health and their long-term welfare.
Honesty is always the best policy, right? And I think stomach stapling, that must be for like real severe weight issues. Whereas like we're talking 31 pounds, what's that? Yeah. Anyway, you can lose that. And I think people, we're all made different. I thought she was Venus actually for a second. And yeah, that leads to my first thought that everyone is made different in different frames. And God designed us differently, and I'm glad. And yeah, drugs for weight loss. I don't know what's inside those drugs, like the guys have expressed. And I have even less trust in pharmaceuticals after what's happened in the last 6 years. So
Right.
it sounds dodgy as heck to me. And what are the long-term effects? But if you've done your best to eat better, sleep better, move enough, you're good. If you've won 23 Grand Slams in that body, you're more than good. So poor Serena. I know that she got mocked endlessly, but you just need to have the fortitude to get over some of that stuff and not be a suki baba. And I think everybody just needs to grow some resilience when it comes to like just having the hard truth of reality put in your face, and you're like, do better for yourself.
Okay, 31 pounds is 14 kg, so that's quite nice, losing 14 kg. And
nice.
It was after she'd had kids, so she'd struggled to get the weight off apparently. Rodney, look, I think everyone knows that, and I think we've discussed this before on a previous episode, that it was an issue for you, but you took a different approach, didn't you?
Well, being fat's been a problem my whole life, so I identified with it. That's the wrong saying, isn't it? But a couple of things. That ad upsets me enormously because, first up, we shouldn't get offended about being fat shamed, because this is what I discovered last year, or now the year before last, is that we're made in God's image and he loves us forever. And no one can shame us because he breathed life into us and we are for him. And so we shouldn't be embarrassed about our bodies at all, and we shouldn't allow ourselves to be offended. So this idea, the fat shaming thing is a lack of awareness of who you are. If you're that fragile, you don't realize that you bathe in God's love. The second thing is, of course, we all know we could be healthier by carrying less weight. And we know what to do, and we should be able to do it. But it's the idea that you would take a pill or jab a pharmaceutical into your body to achieve it. That's the sort of modern age, isn't it? Oh, I have something I can't do, I'll take a pill. I'm feeling a bit low, I'll take a pill. And it's this quick fix, and it's a total abdication of responsibility. And again, I think it's a failure to appreciate the love of Jesus, that she feels the need to stick a jab in her body. And so I think that if you don't, and I know this because I've had it my whole life, God's love was there before we were born, and it's forever. If you don't have that, if you don't know of that, then you're lost. And you can be knocked off course in your life by mean things that people say or the things that life throws at you. But once you have the eternal grace of God, you're stronger than that. Mm-hmm. And so that's what makes me sad, that she feels the need to do that. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well done. Let's just finish with a couple of comments, including one classic. Where is it? Here we are. Kevin says, Nathan, if you have lost 15 kg, that's equivalent to 30, I think that's pounds of butter that your heart is not pumping blood through. You're a champion. Well done.
Thanks, Kevin.
Although the argument is you go up to people and you always tell them if they've lost weight, but if they've put on weight, you don't dare mention it, which is probably thinking about their feelings maybe.
It's called being polite, Bob.
Polite, exactly. Look, my funny story is that when I was at school, my name was Robert officially, and I said Robert because at primary school I did not want to be called Bob, because Bob rhymes with blob and gob and slob. So I was Robert at primary school, just to all my friends at primary school. That's why, so you couldn't tease me. Nancy Margaret says, people are happy to speak out about smoking, drinking, but don't dare say the word fat. Dean says, oh, for F's sake, just as well we're not going on to the last topic. We'll run out of time, Dean. The more you eat, the bigger you get. If you don't burn it off, there's no hope for some. Well, there's always hope, as Rodney's just told us, because Jackie says healthy lifestyle is a strong answer. Nautical thanks you for that, Rodney. Amen. Kaoso says that Rauri, who's the deputy leader of the Te Pāti Māori, got the stomach staple, and he said Māori were genetically superior. Okay, interesting quote. Quote of the night comes from a good friend of yours, Susie. Less KFC could help one guy on air.
Oh.
Out. Is your husband always honest with you as well, Susie? Every time I get KFC, I have Diet Coke, which cancels the calories in the Coke. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, look, we're out of time, so we're going to have to discuss swear words. We're going to have to swear in the next episode, so we'll come back to that one. But thank you, team. You've done a great job. Thank you, Rodney, Susie, Mel, and Nathan. Have a great night, and we will be back same time next week. Thanks for watching. See you then.